One of the most concerning fires is a wind-driven bobcat fire that's threatening more than 1,000 homes near Los Angeles. And you're listening to USA Radio News.
This is sponsored by Understood. During COVID-19, families have been spending a lot of time together. Many parents are seeing changes in their child's behavior that may be signs of something more. In the U.S., nearly 15 million people have learning and thinking differences like dyslexia and ADHD, and the symptoms aren't always clear. That's why Understood created Take Note, a new initiative to help families find the support they need. Bob Cunningham, Understood's learning development expert, says,
Our simple memory device, Take Note, can help families notice changes, observe patterns, talk to family, and engage trusted resources like pediatricians. We partnered with the American Academy of Pediatrics to help families spot the signs of learning and thinking differences and to get help.
Amanda Morin, Understood's expert in family advocacy and education, says,
As a mother to kids who learn differently, I know it's so important to spot the signs, to listen to our instincts, and take control with the resources like Take Note.
Visit u.org/take note.
Democrats and Republicans still working to avenge another partial government shutdown. With the latest, here's USA Radio Network's Chris Barnes in Washington.
The latest effort to avoid a federal government shutdown appears to be failing. With just 9 days to go, House Democrats introduced a short-term spending bill, but it doesn't include the bailout money for farmers that President Trump has called for. Senate Republicans now say they'll vote against the bill once the House passes it later this week.
Tropical Storm Beta is moving inland and dumping a lot of rain on the Texas Gulf Coast. The storm made landfall Monday night, and forecasters at the National Hurricane Center say some areas could get more than a foot of rain. Despite being told to evacuate, these Gulf Coast residents tell NBC News they're staying put.
No, we stay for every tropical storm.
If it was a Category 4, we were in trouble, we would have been gone by now.
And you're listening to USA Radio News.
Working from home? I'm Chad Dodd, veterinarian and consultant to Limp Bells. Here are some tips for keeping your dog fit while staying at home. Find 15 minutes twice a day and walk your pet at a decent pace around your place. Play hide and seek by hiding some kibble or favorite toys and letting your dog find them. If you have stairs and your dog is mobile, walk up and down twice a day for 5 to 10 minutes. Or better yet, try a power walk on your terrace or backyard for some fresh air. There are more helpful pet care tips at youmove.com, spelled youmove.com.
Going a little bit more in depth on one of our top stories regarding President Trump nominating someone to replace Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the Supreme Court. One of the names we're hearing is Judge Amy Coney Barrett. Coney Barrett is a pro-life Christian conservative. She went to high school with Congressman Mike Johnson from Louisiana. He tells Fox News what he remembers about Barrett.
She's an exceptional pick and an exceptional person, Tucker. You know, she's had this phenomenal career. She's a brilliant constitutional scholar, as everyone will see and hear. But more important than that, she's a great person. She's a wife and a doting mother of 7 children. 2 of them are adopted from Haiti. 1 has special needs, her youngest. She's grounded, you know, and that makes her a relatable person. And I think that's exactly the kind of justice that we need on the Supreme Court, someone who can relate to real people and understand the real problems and real quandaries of real Americans. And I think she'll be a great pick. She's only 48 years old. I mean, she could serve on the court for more than a generation, you know. I think she checks all the boxes, and if she is in the top slot, it'll be great.
William LaCroix is set to be the 6th federal inmate executed by lethal injection this year in a U.S. prison in Terre Haute, Indiana. LaCroix, a believer in witchcraft, in 2001 killed a woman who he believed put a spell on him. More news can be found online at usaradio.com. For USA Radio News, I'm Tim Berg.
The following is an America Matters media production. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of the station or its advertisers, although we think they should. But that's the opinion of America Matters Media.
America spends 5 to 10 times more on health care than any other country in the world. Then why does America rank number 43 worldwide for longevity? Third world countries, such as Cuba and Costa Rica, rank higher than the U.S. So what's wrong with healthcare in America? This is what's wrong. Our $3 trillion healthcare industry is focused on disease management, while 70% of our planet relies on traditional indigenous medicine that is focused on health optimization. Learn how Join Dr. Dan Royal on the show The Royal Treatment, bringing you the latest information on the best of medicine, biotechnology, and pharmacology, as well as secrets from the past. These secrets have withstood the test of time and are being rediscovered today. In fact, indigenous healthcare practitioners are using them for the benefit of their patients who seek optimal health and wellness. Now, here is Dr. Dan Royal.
You're on, Dr. Dan. You there?
Yes, I am.
All right, we're waiting for you. Ready to go.
Okay, I'm here.
Go. 3, 2, 1.
Hello, greetings. I'm Dr. Dan Royal. You're listening to The Royal Treatment. We're here every week to answer your health questions. Let's start by thanking our sponsors. We first like to thank our Turtle Healing Man Clinic, where I practice here in Las Vegas, as well as the First Nation Medical Board. Both of these entities are under the jurisdiction of the Crow Tribe of Indians. Now, that sounds a little unusual, but what you don't know or may not know is that the Crow Tribe of Indians has stepped up to regulate the practice of what we call traditional medicine. Traditional medicine is not regulated by any states in this country, and that incorporates or includes the supervision of practices that are, well, unconventional, such as alternative medicine, holistic medicine, complementary medicine, and so forth. So we wish to thank them for that. If you're looking for health optimization, that's where you can find from doctors like me who practice this type of traditional medicine, as well as throughout the country. If you need to reach me here at the Turtle Healing Man Clinic, you can always call 702-562-1454. That's 702-562-1454, or you can email me directly with your medical questions at droyal@thbclinic.com. That's D as in Daniel Royal, ROYAL at THB for Turtle Healing Man Clinic.com. And now on with the show. As you may know, we have 4 segments, and we'll be taking some break during those segments. We like to have a guest with us so you can get a broader perspective about what you can do to optimize your health and well-being. Remember, our goal for you is that you learn one new thing while being with us today. And if you can do that, well, then your time has been well spent. We'd like to welcome to the program today a physician, a cardiologist from Detroit, Michigan, who is also known as America's health doctor. And he's been practicing for, well, quite a while. Actually, he may be practicing in Florida, and I think I'll have him introduce himself and tell us a little bit more about himself. His name is Dr. Joel Kahn. Joel, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you very much. It's a royal pleasure to be here. Sorry, grew up in business. Now, very briefly, I have been practicing 31 years. I'm 61 years old, been doing a lot of cardiology for a lot of time in Detroit. Trained in Ann Arbor, Michigan, trained in Dallas, Kansas City, and I finished all that being like an expert in heart attacks, stents, emergency cardiology. Wonderful career. But along the way, I have been plant-based for over 40 years. Some people call that vegan, healthy rabbit eater. I got more and more interested in preventive cardiology, and about 5 years ago, I threw away the stents and the balloons and going in at 3 a.m, and I just work with people now all over the world with lifestyle problems or genetic cholesterol disorders, want to get off medication, and we get people healthy. So I hope we can have people walk away with here with more than one tip, but eat plants. That's a good tip. It even, in the era of COVID, my mask, which is called the Kahn Center, has the message. I can't let the patients ever forget. It's one path to health. It's not the only path.
So you're primarily based in Detroit, Michigan. Is that correct?
Right. I do have licenses in many states, so I do a lot of telehealth, and Florida, if you mentioned, is a big part of that, Atlanta, Georgia, and other places. But yes, I don't travel anymore. Maybe we'll start traveling again. I used to be in Vegas for many, many medical meetings. We'll get back there.
Yeah, once all the nonsense passes, sure, we welcome you back. I know you've written a number of books, and you're at least nationally renowned author. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the books you've written.
Yeah, when I wanted to be authentic and educated. It actually was scary to contemplate on leaving standard cardiology to do, call it natural cardiology. And I didn't want to do it poorly. I hadn't done the other part of my training poorly. It was always the top places. So I did find a program. Actually, a lot of it was done in classrooms in Las Vegas. Believe it or not, there is actually education that goes on there. Some of it were other places. But anyways, when I finished that all up in 2012, I said, whoa, I didn't know a cardiologist in the United States who could talk the language I had studied. Always science-based. Voodoo is okay outside of the clinic. In the clinic, you try and talk science.
Sure.
So I grabbed a contract with Reader's Digest and I started writing for their magazine. But I wrote a book called Your Whole Heart Solution, 72 unusual tips to better heart health. Some of them aren't so unusual, like sleep, like diet, like weight control, like fitness. But some of them are strange, like infrared sauna, which has a ton of science and some other approaches there. And then I wrote a book, still a fun one, called Dead Execs Don't Get Bonuses. It's basically a short little guide for anybody, it doesn't have to be an exec, on what tests to ask your doctor to get the best heart check, like I do here in Detroit. Come see me in Detroit, schedule telehealth, or read a book for $14, whatever you want. And then 2 years ago, I wrote a book called The Plant-Based Solution. Really a look at the science. You've got weight, you've got diabetes, you've got neurologic, you've got cardiac, you've got kidney. What does the science say about eating plant-based? Wanted to address that since I've been involved in that nutrition pattern for over 40 years. And just to finish up, just in March, I published my 6th book called Lipoprotein A. Very unpopular title. No editor would tell you to call a book after a molecule of cholesterol. But it turns out this is a kind of cholesterol that 1 out of every, here's that moment everybody can learn. You said there'd be one. 1 out of every 4 persons inherits this cholesterol from their parents. Lipoprotein A. And we okay with our transmission?
Yeah.
I hear a little music in the background. Somebody's jamming, but that's okay. And at any rate,
Well, we'll go to it. Let's just take a quick break just to be sure. I'm Dr. Dan Roy. You're listening to Royal Treatment. My guest today is Dr. Joel Kahn. We'll be back right after the message. Thank you for sticking with us.
Did you know that 4,000 years ago, the Earth's magnetic field was 5 Gauss? Over the last 165 years, scientists have measured the Earth's magnetic field and found that today it is only 0.5 Gauss, a decrease of 90%. However, your brain needs the Earth's magnetic field to restore energy to your cells. The good news is that the magnetic sleep pad can give your brain what it needs to restore energy to your cells. Order your magnetic sleep pad by calling 702-444-LUCKY. Think of the magnetic sleep pad as a powerful engine in your car. It gets you up hills faster and with less wear and tear. With the magnetic sleep pad, your brain now has the energy it needs to repair your damaged cells, make enzymes, enhance immunity, and protect you against electrosmog, all while you sleep. Get your magnetic sleep pad by calling 702-444-LUCKY. Studies have shown that the magnetic sleep pad can help improve pain, sleep, fatigue, energy, and concentration. Get a free quote for your magnetic sleep pad by calling 702-444-LUCKY. That number again is 702-444-5825.
You wanted to see me?
Yes, please, have a seat. So here's the thing. When this company brought you on, we took a chance on you. You didn't have that 4-year college degree we typically look for.
Right.
But we gave you a shot anyway. And since then, you've worked incredibly hard and given it your all.
Thanks.
You've been an important asset to the team, but I don't think you can be an intern here anymore. We want to hire you.
You're serious?
Absolutely.
Find your next great employee. Introduce yourself to the Grads of Life. Who are they? Talent worth knowing about. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or even mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
I won't let you down.
I know.
Don't miss out on a resource many innovative companies have already discovered. Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
So here's the choice. Some people say the USA is finished. It's evil, a has-been, full of hate and injustice. The U.S. Constitution should be trashed and the Bill of Rights abolished. No free speech, no gun ownership. Competition and free markets are bad. We're all too stupid. For our own good, the government must own everything and know all your secrets.
Other people say that America has created the freest, richest, happiest, most generous society that has ever existed in the world. That's why millions of people are desperate to come here and escape their brutal lives in Cuba, Venezuela, North Korea, and 100 other countries.
In America, we have the right to succeed, the right to our own living, the right to have a family, the right to believe in God, the right to have our own ideas, the right to be safe and secure, and the right to be left alone.
Where do you stand? Help us save the Constitution and restore the American dream. Go to SaveMyFreedom.com.
Brought to you by the American Media Council.
GreatBasinHighway.com, Great Basin Highway magazine, radio show. Visit GreatBasinHighway.com and sign up for a free online subscription to our magazine.
To join the conversation, call 844-790-TALK. That's 844-790-8255. Now back to the show.
We are back. I'm Dr. Daniel Royal, and you're listening to The Royal Treatment with my guest today, cardiologist Dr. Joel Kahn. And like the message said, that's a number you can call during the live show if you have a question. But you can also email me directly anytime, and we can discuss those on the air. That email, droyal@thb.com. D as in Daniel, Royal, RYAL@THB for Turtle, Clinic.com. Now back to our guest, Dr. Joel. We're talking a little bit about your new book, which I personally find fascinating because we do routinely test patients for lipoprotein A, and we find that actually it's a much higher number that seem to have an elevated lipoprotein A biomarker risk factor than 1 out of 4. But anyway, I'd like to hear more about what you have to say.
Something about that Vegas lifestyle, but this really is a wow moment for people to pay attention to for a minute. I did not identify lipoprotein little a. You know, it's just such an awkward thing to say, but everybody just look at the name for a minute. It's a kind of cholesterol. It either mom and dad give you through their genetics or they don't. And if it was 1 person in a million, I wouldn't talk about it. It's 1 in every 4 persons has a blood test that's elevated above the normal range. And the more elevated it is because of genetics, it's not really, there's things that happen if you eat a bad diet and don't exercise. This one is genetic. But if it's elevated, it can clog up your heart arteries, your brain arteries, your sexual organ arteries. It can even lead to a heart valve problem. That all of these can be serious. But if you have it elevated, it doesn't mean you're going to get these problems, but you should know. Unfortunately, the current American medical model, unlike the European model, is we don't test for it. It's about a $30 blood test. It can be done on anybody, anytime, but it never shows up. If you've had your cholesterol done 10 times, it does not include lipoprotein little a. You have to go to your lab or ask your doctor, your nurse, your physician assistant. Next time around, particularly if grandpa, grandma, aunts, uncles, mom, dad, brother, sister had a heart event like a stent, a bypass, and just like you said in your practice, you start seeing, wow, you've been seeing a cardiologist for 20 years. We never knew. I just had a gentleman leave my office literally 5 minutes ago. I'm absolutely certain when I get his labs back because heart attack at age 44. Patient last week, heart attack at age 34, lipoprotein A out the roof. So we are starting to do enough research that we'll have a unique drug to lower it and manage it within the next few years. But there are strategies to deal with it right now. And, you know, quit smoking, get fitness, eat healthy would always be a good place to start.
You know, my understanding is the only thing that's been found to lower the lipoprotein A is niacin, but maybe you have found that there are other things that can be done to help improve this genetic risk factor.
Yeah, you know, niacin, which is an over-the-counter B vitamin, we've used it for cholesterol disorders for 60 years, does lower lipoprotein little a. I use it quite a bit. It also lowers your overall cholesterol, so it's a win-win. You might get a hot flush. You have to watch some lab values, but it works. It's never been studied in 1,000 or 10,000 people, so we don't know for sure that it lowers the risk of future heart attack and stroke, but you would imagine it would. We just don't know. It's sort of out of favor right now, but I use it and other lipoprotein A experts around the country use it. Interestingly, the Lipitors, the Crestor statins, they do not lower it at all, and sometimes they raise it substantially. Doesn't mean you can't use them, but you're not going to see the number improve if that's the goal. There's an injectable cholesterol drug that's a prescription that's very expensive called Repatha that lowers it. And a drug company out of Europe called Novartis has a drug that's probably going to be the winner, but it's going to be about 4 years till a 8,000 patient study is completed. In the meantime, if you find it's elevated, it's lifestyle, lifestyle, lifestyle. Best blood pressure, best blood sugar, best cholesterol, exercise, eat super healthy, don't smoke.
Well, you mentioned earlier in the program, you were practicing medicine for 30 years, and it sounds like made a conversion to maybe a more healthful lifestyle or alternative approach that included more than just drugs back around 2012. Can you tell us a bit more about why you made this transition in your practice and maybe your lifestyle?
Yeah, you know, I started with my own lifestyle, and I've always been a little bit more focused, really, even as a medical student resident. I will never run a marathon, but I ate better. I always got to the pool or the running track, and I just kind of monitored these things a little bit more. There was a little heart disease in my family. And I happened to train in cardiology in Dallas, Texas, where the Nobel Prize in Medicine was awarded when I was there on cholesterol metabolism. So I started learning and reading from some of the experts about cholesterol. But I kind of put that to the side while I was training to put in stents and balloons. But I was aware, for example, in 1990, the year I started practicing, Dr. Dean Ornish at University of California, San Francisco, published an unbelievably powerful paper that if you have clogged arteries and you change your lifestyle, you can start to unclog your arteries. Everybody should have been dancing up and down. We've got a cure for this horrible problem. There wasn't a billing code. There weren't training programs. And I did teach that from the beginning, but it was basically read Dr. Ornish's book or ultimately watch his DVD or go to this website when we had those facilities. But now it's a whole specialty. And I just got intrigued, you know, by the biochemistry of and the physiology and the genetics, and it's the future. We shouldn't have heart attacks. I mean, when President Eisenhower in 1955 had a massive heart attack, almost killed him, he was cared for by a Harvard cardiologist, Paul Dudley White, who in 1955 said, heart attacks before age 80 are a failure of our medical system. But he didn't have the technology to implement it. In 2020, that's a true statement. You can go see a good preventive cardiologist at age 40, 45, find out everything going on in your blood. It's more than the average blood work. You can get a CAT scan of your heart, find out if your arteries are getting aged, and you can make a plan like we do with cancer diseases and arthritis diseases. But for heart disease, we do encourage people to have a healthy lifestyle. We just don't practice very precise medicine, but it's all available right now. And it's not elite. This is not an elitist approach. You know, to get this blood test is a few bucks. To get a heart CT scan is $75. We can be very accurate.
Well, Dwight Eisenhower was a chain smoker. My understanding is after he had his heart attack, he decided to give up those cigarettes. Do you find that patients make similar lifestyle changes after a life-changing event that they were fortunate enough to survive?
Yeah, the rumor was during World War II, he was 4-pack-a-day smoker. I believe by the time he was in the White House, he had quit smoking. But what he is credited for is he made some serious, under the advice of Dr. Paul Dudley White, one of the early adopters of the Mediterranean diet, which wasn't very well known in the 50s and 60s. He started eating much less meat, much less butter, much less cheese, more salads, more vegetables, watching the fat content, a healthy version. And he lived about 15 more years after a heart attack that wouldn't have been predicted to have given him that kind of sustained life until about age 80. So yeah, people resist it. I mean, I had a patient today who's got heart disease and still smokes. And, you know, you want to literally pull your hair out. But since I'm 61, I still got hair. I'm going to be very careful not to pull it out. But yeah, it's very frustrating. You just, you know, lead a horse to water, but you can't always get him to eat healthy food and quit smoking.
Well, what would you say was the biggest change in your practice? Obviously, you're a conventional trained cardiologist going back 30 years, but in the last 10 years, you made some changes in the way that perhaps you treat your patients. What would you say that some of the biggest changes were to approach your treatment of patients and their heart condition?
It's actually harder, and I don't say this to congratulate myself. I have to stay up on all the conventional. I have to stay up on the new drugs for congestive heart failure, the new drugs for hypertension, the new testing by CT scans or MRI. I have to. I mean, I still utilize those. But I have to also keep up on the latest nutritional data and the latest supplement data and the latest testing outside. So I actually work harder, even though I'm not going in at 3 a.m. Probably the biggest change is two things: using CT scans. You're 48 years old, you come to see me. My father had a heart attack at age 59. I'm worried. I'm going to give you a script. Go to the local hospital in Vegas, Detroit, Miami, LA, it doesn't matter. $75 to $100. You're going to spend a minute getting a CT scan of your heart, and you're going to come back to me, and I'm going to tell you, great news, your arteries are still very youthful, or concerning news, you're developing the process that got your father or your grandmother, and we're going to make a plan. And the second one would be labs. You know, every time I see somebody sent by an internist or a family doc who I greatly respect, it's the same lab panel I did in 1990. It's not lipoprotein little a, homocysteine, C-reactive protein, vitamin D. We've got Dr. Fauci talking about vitamin D as a protection for COVID, and a surprisingly small number of primary care docs draw a vitamin D blood level. So yes, we don't have the perfect study that proves you'll live longer, but this is not a real good time to be severely vitamin D deficient. So it's lab testing, and precision medicine, I think, is really the great term.
So when someone gets a CT scan of their coronary arteries, I think that's what you're referring to, that's looking at the hard plaque. How much of a factor is a soft plaque that may not be showing up?
Yeah, so again, for anybody that doesn't know, this technology is not new. It goes back 25 plus years. The progression of CT scanners to faster and faster models. You can lie down on a stretcher and you can hold your breath, and boom, your heart is x-rayed, you get a report. Comes back 0, you won. Now, it looks at calcium, which is we call hard plaque. You're absolutely right. You might miss a little spot of soft plaque. But if you look at people that are 50 years old with a calcium score of 0 or a calcium score of 400, the difference over the next 10 years is dramatic. So it may not be perfect, but it's far more perfect than just using a stethoscope. So I use it all the time. And now the American Heart Association says it's a test to help predict risk and help you know if you really need a Lipitor or just healthy diet.
I appreciate you saying that. I'm Dr. Daniel Royal. My guest today is cardiologist Joel Kahn. We're going to take a short break and come back after these messages from our sponsors. Stay with us.
Did you know that stem cells are present in all of us, just waiting for an opportunity to regenerate your organs and other body tissues? Studies show that your own stem cells are released into the bloodstream following a trauma. However, a plant-based supplement called RBC Blend has been found to increase stem cells in your blood without trauma. Order your RBC Blend by calling 702-444-LUCKY. One study showed that participants who used RBC Blend increased stem cells in their blood by over 100% after only 2 weeks. Increase your stem cells with RBC Blend by calling 702-444-LUCKY. Stem cells are the ultimate anti-aging treatment. For example, they can be used to improve facial appearance, skin tone, and hair growth. Stem cells can also help with muscle aches and joint pains. Increase your stem cells with RBC Blend by calling 702-444-5825. Could RBC Blend be what you need to achieve optimal health and wellness? Find out today and order RBC Blend by calling 702-444-LUCKY. That number again is 702-444-5825.
Rich is just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich? No. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Take a look under your bed. Find stuff under there? What about jobs? No? Now try your basement. There's a pair of overalls that overall you're not so into anymore. A perfectly good laptop that hasn't sat in your lap in months. And even more stuff, but still no jobs? Well, you really have both. See, stuff is defined as household articles considered as a group. Sometimes this stuff is no longer needed. Wait, no longer needed? That can't be right. Because remember those jobs you were looking for? Those are really needed, and they're the stuff inside your stuff. Even inside that winter coat that moved with you to Phoenix. Our job is to unlock those jobs, and it starts when you donate your stuff to your local Goodwill. Here's how we do it. When you donate to Goodwill, we sell your stuff to provide job training for people right here in your community. So just by teaming up with Goodwill, you help create jobs. And isn't that worth parting with the leftover guitar from your 80s cover band? Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs. Find your nearest donation center at goodwill.org. A message from Goodwill and the Ad Council.
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
Want to expand your advertising dollar? Sponsor this or any America Matters program by calling 775-827-8900, extension 2. Now back to the show.
We are back to the show. I'm Dr. Daniel Royal, and you're listening to The Royal Treatment. We're here every week on America Matters Media to answer your health questions. And one of those health questions we're addressing today, which is about your heart health and cholesterol, is something that, well, every physician tests when their patients come in. They do routine blood tests, as Dr. Khan was mentioning before the break, that they've been doing for, well, generations. Your CBC, your chemistry, your blood fats. But as you now know, if you listened to the first half of our program, there are other more interesting tests that can be ordered that are not part of the routine testing. And one of those is lipoprotein A that we've been talking about. My guest today is Dr. Joel Kahn, so let's give him the floor again. Dr. Kahn, I have a question for you. In your bio, it mentions that you serve as a medical director for the largest plant support group in the United States of America. And can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, this is the topic kind of heart disease reversal, and we can merge that into chelation. But as I briefly mentioned, there's a pioneer, one of several, Dr. Dean Ornish, who designed a very well and thoughtful study that was published in 1990 that blockages could be induced to start to go away. So the reason I bring that up, about 6.5 years ago, a gentleman in Detroit called me to say, I was supposed to have bypass surgery at age 55. I learned about this nutritional data the evening before my open heart surgery. I checked out of the hospital. I started making massive dietary changes to a plant healthy diet, naturally low in fat. And he goes, within a few months, my waistline was down, my blood pressure, my cholesterol, my blood sugar, my chest pain stopped. And I just got back from the cardiologist. He says, my stress test is normal now. It was horrible. I'm not going to have bypass surgery. But what he said to me was, I'm a bit lonely. My wife's still not sure what the heck I'm doing with all these salads and, broccoli and cauliflower. My coworkers think I'm crazy. Can we make a support group? And I said, Paul, I've been teaching this to cardiology patients for, at that point, 25 years. Absolutely. I should have done it earlier. And we got a room at my hospital for 20 people invited. 125 people showed up. In fact, the hospital was ticked off because the room only held 80. And we actually talked about reversing disease without bypass. When they got up to the administrators, they said, that's a very bad business plan for the hospital. They let us keep the room for one more time next month, and nearly 200 people showed up. And we knew that we were finding a crowd that was looking for, like, I don't want to use example, AA or Weight Watchers, other people on a health journey using food as a healing process. Well, that thing just exploded with like no money and no real organization. So there's now like 7,500 members in southeastern Michigan and many around the world that just log on to the website. Now it all has to be Zoom lectures by leaders in health and nutrition and cooking classes, pbnsg.org. It's been a tremendous impact. Once in a while, when we used to do these in a group, and there'd be 500 people in the audience at a high school, because we got kicked out of the hospital for the reasons I described, and we got too big. We stand up and we say, now, weight loss isn't always a measure of health, and it's not the only measure, but there are people that are trying to lose weight, and we ask them, how many in the audience lost 100 pounds? 10 people show up, and we're not talking bariatric surgery, we're talking food. How many lost 75, 50? 50, 25. It's like half the audience stands up. It's very powerful for the new person there. Community is always a great, support as you're making hopefully healthy lifestyle decisions.
Yeah, I had a patient in my office yesterday, and we were going over some of his labs that we had done earlier in the year. But he was actually scheduled to, or I should say, recommend to have heart bypass surgery. He elected to do something you alluded to just a moment ago called chelation. Chelation therapy can be done orally, can be done IV. He did it IV therapy, and it helped to lower even some of his genetic biomarkers, if you will, like the beta natriuretic peptide, as well as the LP plaque. And he's doing fine. That's been a couple of years ago, and he's feeling great and never needed to have the heart bypass surgery. Another patient was actually in the hospital, and he was scheduled for bypass the next day. And if he didn't do the bypass, they were going to do the angioplasty. He checked himself out of the hospital and came here. We're right across the street. He did IV therapy and is doing just fine. That was well over a year ago. So maybe, have you had any experiences like that in using chelation agents of some sort to help patients with cardiovascular disease?
Yeah, I have. And, there's a little Detroit connection. I don't know if you know this, but because of our auto factories in the 1960s, sometimes people are exposed to toxic doses of mercury and lead from paints and other exposures. So a local hospital came up with the protocol for IV chelation for environmental toxicity. And people started reporting, it's odd, I'm getting this because of my work exposure, my blood pressure is better and I'm breathing better. And off it went. So yes, there is still a need. We have a big National Institute of Health sponsored study that was published in 2012 called the TAC trial, and another phase of it that will be published in a couple of years. It's good to see science in large numbers applied, and it must have attracted the attention that our government has put $30 million, $40 million into these studies. But I use an oral chelating agent. Chelating is a Latin word for claw, meaning we're kind of grabbing the plaque and removing it conceptually. Still like a little more verification of that in terms of actual good arterial studies. But it is a route. I always would couple it with great lifestyle and monitoring biochemistry and improving biochemistry, like omega-3, vitamin D, and you mentioned BNP and plaque tests. But it's good to know we've got another strong resource there, chelation.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, that started back there with the Ford Motor Company patients that have been exposed to, heavy metals and lead, and then they noticed as a secondary benefit that they have improvement in their circulation. And so when we talk about chelation, we're really referring to the fact that it's removing environmental pollutants or toxins from the body. Most everybody who lives in a city now is exposed to lead and cadmium. At least that's what we find when we test our patients. And so we can definitely document that those elements are being removed with the chelation process. And as a result of that, good things happen. And of course, everybody expects miracles, but it's really a series of treatments. And the national standard is actually about 30 treatments. I had a patient in my office yesterday who was asking me about what he can do to help lower his risk. And there was a study done years ago in Switzerland that showed even if patients did just 10 treatments, it lowered their cancer morbidity by about 90%. This was done in a Switzerland city that was right next to an Autobahn, so they were exposed to a higher level of lead and cadmium from automobile exhaust. And so I've always thought that was quite interesting. It can be used as a preventive as well as a treatment, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. So you also use some oral chelating agents. So have you found those to be as effective as the IV therapy?
Yeah, well, the question always is, how do you monitor it? Because there really isn't a specific blood test. So just to add to your audience's knowledge, it's not so easy to image heart arteries and actually prove that heart arteries are improving. People may feel better, which is always nice. You can look at the arteries to the brain, the carotid arteries, and with careful ultrasound, which is great because no radiation, spend about 20 minutes in getting a study and then repeating it in 6 or 12 months with some intervention. Could be diet, could be supplements, could be chelation. So using that, I have seen major improvements in the youthfulness of people's arteries, major reduction in their plaque. And it's very scientifically done. In fact, my studies are read at a university, so I don't have any bias to tell a patient that it's getting better. It's just purely objective. But yeah, it works. It makes sense too. If you're developing plaque because of diet, stress, poor sleep, smoking, blood pressure, blood sugar, just fix those things, and your arteries should stop building a plaque. And we've learned they can actually start to mobilize and reduce the plaque slowly but steadily, with chelation being part of that equation.
We talked a little bit about lifestyle, such as diet and even some medical approaches. What about exercise? How is exercise for our heart health?
Yeah, it's critical, and it's critical for brain health, and it's critical for anti-aging too. But it's very much a dose. We call it in our field, you know, that a J-shaped curve. If you don't exercise at all, the risk can be high. It's possible if you're over-exercising, there may be a constant inflammation state of, you know, just repeatedly injuring yourself. So, you know, the American Heart Association, 50% Americans don't exercise, 50 do. American Heart Association says 22 minutes a day of moderate or intense exercise. Most of us can get 22 minutes a day. That's 150 minutes a weekend. Could be 3 times 50 minutes, could be 22 minutes every day. Doesn't have to be an hour and 22 minutes every day. If it's your passion, go for it. But just don't make excuses. You know, 15 minutes or a high intensity protocol, it's going to help shift your cholesterol profile to less atherogenic, help lower your blood sugar, lower inflammation. Extremely good for, you know, avoiding brain aging prematurely. So if you don't do it for your heart, you know, be concerned about your memory and get moving. And it doesn't matter. Gardening, dancing, ellipticals, rowing machines, yoga, Pilates, weightlifting, swimming, you know, rotate around, which is what I do. I do different things every day. Just I get a little bored with the previous day's workout. But don't hurt yourself. That's my golden rule. I'm not a big fan of trainers making me walk like a zombie for 2 days. It's not a fun experience. I don't think you need to be that sore.
Yeah, so my usual recommendation to patients is if they're going to exercise, find something that you enjoy, because if the exercise is actually more stressful and you're having to look at your watch every few minutes to figure out when you're done, it may be more sympathetic than parasympathetic. And there's a test out there. It's actually a measure of our autonomic nervous system balance, but it is known to be a predictor of the sudden death syndrome. That's called heart rate variability. I didn't know if you've had any experience with that in particular, but maybe we can talk about that when we come back from the break. I'm Dr. Dan Royal. You're listening to the Royal Treatment, and my guest today is cardiologist Dr. Joel Kahn. And we're talking about what you can do, my friends, to improve your health and well-being and prevent a heart attack or anything remotely related to that. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Would you like to increase your vitality? Disease develops within your body when the metabolic vitality of your cells is altered. Well, now there is a patented device that improves cell metabolism called Cell Vital. Cell Vital has been used for years by successful athletes to prepare for competition and improve performance. This is because Cell Vital increases blood and oxygen to your cells. Call 702-444-LUCKY and order your Cell Vital today. Cell Vital can help with cell regeneration after an activity by reducing stress, as well as be used for treating bruises, sprains, and muscle aches and pains. Cell Vital has also been shown to be beneficial for digestion, PMS, and smoking cessation. Get lucky with your health and call 702-444-5825. Accessories are available to help with specific body parts, such as the eyes, ears, and teeth. Animals too can benefit from Cell Vital for bone, joint, and circulation disorders. Call 702-444-LUCKY and get a free quote for your Cell Vital. That number again is 702-444-5825.
As humans, we ask ourselves all kinds of questions. But what if we were forced to ask ourselves a question every day that affected the outcome of the most basic things, the most important things in our lives? The question is, what is your sexual orientation or gender identity? And the answer is the difference between keeping your job or getting fired. The answer is the difference between staying in your home or getting evicted. The answer is the difference between receiving medical treatment or not. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against people based on their answer to this question. LGBT Americans have the right to say I do, but they don't have the same basic rights as everyone else. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
All right, crew, let's get her dug.
Honey, you want to give me a hand? I'm planting that tree, remember?
No matter how large or small,
your digging project may be, no matter how urban or rural, you must always call 811 before any digging project. 811 is our national one-call number, alerting your local utility companies to come out and mark any lines they have near your dig site. You must call 811 at least 2 to 3 business days before any digging project, so you can avoid hitting our essential buried utilities. This includes natural gas and petroleum pipelines, electric, communication cables, and water and sewer lines. So before you do this or this, make sure you do this. For digging projects big or small, make the call to 811. Brought to you by Common Ground Alliance.
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
Unable to listen to the whole show? A recording of today's program will be available later today. Visit americamatters.us and click on the podcast link. Now, back to the show.
We are back to the show, and you're listening to Dr. Dan Royal with America Matters Media. My guest today is Dr. Joel Kahn. He's a cardiologist, and we're talking about, well, of course, heart health. Now, remember, if you have a question, you can always call me here at the Turtle Healing Band Clinic here in Las Vegas, where we practice what's called traditional or unconventional medicine. The number here is 702-562-1454, 702-562-1454, or email me directly at droyal@thbclinic.com. That's D as in Daniel, Royal, ROYAL, at THB for Turtle Healing Bank Clinic.com. We're here to help you with health optimization, which is really the polar opposite of what conventional medicine is designed to do, and that is a sick care system for disease management. If you want to be healthy, you're going to have to take matters into your own hands, and that's why we have this program. And remember, our goal is to help you learn one new thing, so your time with us has or will be well spent. So back to Dr. Joel Kahn. Now, before the break, we were talking a little bit about heart rate variability. It's a little known test, very easy actually, to evaluate the balance in your autonomic nervous system, the balance between your sympathetic and parasympathetic, because if you're all sympathetic and no parasympathetic, you are at risk for sudden death syndrome. What do you have to say about that, Dr. Joel?
Well, it's an interesting topic. Way back in 1983, 84, 85, I was a resident in internal medicine at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, and I locked in a research project with a esteemed professor of endocrinology, Dr. Vinnick, diabetic specialist. And we did a project, and people may or may not know this, they maybe are aware that diabetics may get a neuropathy where they have funny feelings or lose sensation in their fingers and their feet. Well, that's because the nerves are being glycated and damaged, and neuropathy. It is reversible, hopefully. But the same thing happens to the nerves that innervate the heart, that supply the heart. You mentioned the key words. There's sympathetic nerves, and there's the vagus parasympathetic nerves. We should be nice balance. When we go running, we want our sympathetic system. When we're sleeping and relaxing, listening to music, we want our parasympathetic. Turns out the parasympathetic nerves in diabetics are very prone to being damaged, leaving you with sympathetic drive, you just mentioned, and there is indeed a risk of sudden cardiac death in long-standing diabetics, type 1 and type 2. So the research project was looking at heart rate variability. You breathe in, your heart should speed up. You breathe out, your heart should slow down, and that's a nice normal physiology, but you lose that in diabetes. You lose it in some end-stage kidney diseases. You lose it in some alcoholic end-stage diseases. So we did studies and we published a lot, and it stood the test of time. But what I have many patients do is many of them have either the, I'll say a trade name, the Whoop band, which is like a Garmin, but it's a little more, I think, sophisticated, or they wear the Oura ring at night or throughout the day. And it constantly can measure variability in heart rate correlating with respiration. And you can track your HRV, heart rate variability. You want it to be broad, not narrow, persistently flat. You want it to have some variability. And you can implement changes, deeper sleep, fitness, nutritional changes, practices of breathing, whether they're through yoga or mindfulness, or something called heartmath.org has been shown to increase it. So it's an interesting biomarker that has so much data, but is, relatively rarely discussed in standard cardiology.
Yes, I would agree with that. You're actually the first cardiologist I've ever heard talk about it in any detail and with any cohesive explanation. For those of you who are listening, sympathetic tone is associated with what's called the fight or flight response. It increases your adrenaline. And what Dr. Kahn is telling us is that it's important for us to also be aware of the stress in our lives and managing that appropriately. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree completely. It's a big issue for us in the healthcare world, too. We got to manage our own stress.
So what are some of the things you advise your patients to do to manage their stress, to improve their overall health and, of course, heart condition?
I spend as much time inquiring and counseling on proper sleep as I do on nutrition. They're probably the two biggest conversations we have. And we do sleep studies at home, and we try every spectrum of, supplements for sleep. We wear blue light blocking glasses. We try and calm down before bed and avoid caffeine and excessive wine before bed. We do every measure we can because good sleep is profoundly helpful for your stress level. Some kind of practice. You don't punch the wall and slam the door. And it, for some people, is faith. Some people, it's music. Some people, it's a app on the phone, like the Calm app, the Headspace app. It's a yoga room. I mean, there's many approaches to it. Pets reduce stress if they're well behaved and don't bite your neighbors. There's a little data. If you've had a heart attack and you have a dog to walk, you may actually live longer, do better. And some of that is stress reduction. Nothing better than a dog licking your face, which is what I get every time I come home. And then, of course, there's supplements. I use a lot of ashwagandha, rhodiola, Siberian ginseng, a lot of magnesium before bed, nice stress reduction. Nice Epsom salt bath before bed, great stress reductor. I have an infrared sauna in my house. That's a luxury. Some models are under $1,000, but a nice 20, 25 minutes of sauna therapy, particularly if you got a little music or lights with it, can be very calming. So it's tough right now, too. I mean, with what's gone on in the world in 2020, a tool to manage stress is non-optional for all of us. So whether your kids are at home and you're homeschooling or your spouse is at home with you, first time you're actually trying to work together in the same workspace. These are, you're trying to teach your kids now, you're the school teacher. I mean, it may, we're not traveling as much. Many of my patients don't have to drive 60 minutes to get to work, but there's different circumstances and stress is not less. And for many people, it's actually magnified right now.
Yeah, so there's a lot of supplements that people are taking. In fact, just before the program, I was going over a list of products that a patient of mine had brought in and helped them go down, what's most critical to wanting to take, because a lot of what he's taking was prescribed by other people is over the counter. We typically like to use professional products because if you want to get the benefits of the things you're reading about, you need to get the best quality. So, for example, when it comes to heart health, there's some basic supplements that are typically recommended, such as L-carnitine. You mentioned magnesium. We like magnesium aspartate, and there's also CoQ10 and vitamin E. Do you find that combination to be helpful, or do you recommend something else?
No, I frequently use any and all of those, and then I'll tailor others. I mean, if it's cholesterol, blood sugar, might pull out berberine, might pull out bergamot. It all depends. I try not to make the list ridiculously long. I've got more people now on zinc, vitamin C, quercetin because of immune health. A lot of people, vitamin D, people are concerned, and there's at least a smattering of data to say they're safe and expensive and maybe useful. CoQ10, you mentioned, I'd say it 10 times. I mean, it's the great underused, relatively inexpensive supplement for heart health, migraine health, palpitations. It's a great, great, great add-on. Certainly if you're on a statin like Lipitor, get on CoQ10. And I didn't mention in my own little recitation about stress, more and more for about 2 years now, a lot of, you can call it CBD, you could call it full spectrum hemp. I have, so many of my patients sleeping well because they've discovered that these natural products that are related to marijuana, but they don't have the hallucinogenic aspects, are really, allowing them to fall into a deep sleep and stay asleep.
Earlier in the program, we were talking about lipoprotein A as a biomarker blood test, but there's also a lot of labs out there, specialty labs that can provide a broad spectrum of information. So, for example, let's say that we want to know whether somebody has heavy metals, and we give them a chelation challenge. We send a urine sample to the lab to evaluate that. There's also labs out there that do testing for nutritional deficiencies. We like the one that actually measures white blood cells in the media and grows them, so we know what that's deficient in. Are there any particular specialty labs that you like to give you a broader, more three-dimensional picture of your heart health patients?
Yeah. I've evolved, and I send most of my lab work to Quest because, one, it's very well organized in terms of most people's insurance, and two, they bought Cleveland Heart Labs about 3 years ago, which was a premier advanced heart startup a decade ago, and I can get many things that are actually patented through the Cleveland Clinic that I can't get elsewhere. It's just convenient. But I will go to, as you said, advanced nutrition panels. I do some advanced genetic panels. They're getting less and less expensive. People are interested in their cancer risk. They're interested in their cardiac risk. Understanding inheriting a genetic risk doesn't mean you're getting the disease. It's a risk. Right. But people that want that kind of advanced care, that topic, ApoE, some people know ApoE is a gene that controls cholesterol metabolism in the brain. And should you have the, I won't call it good fortune of inheriting from your parents ApoE4, you are at some risk of earlier dementia in your life, and you want to work on a brain-friendly protocol. You want to be eating blueberries and getting your exercise and managing your weight, managing inflammation, maybe turmeric, and talk about, Bacopa and other ways to maybe enhance brain function. So yeah, I think those are great. There's not a single lab, I'd say, that does them all. So I got to be like you, a little bit selective.
Yeah. So in the closing moments of our program, maybe you could just kind of give us an idea as to what percentage of people do you think will improve if they change their lifestyle? They've now had a heart attack, they've been diagnosed with plaque in their arteries, they're a candidate for cardiac bypass. What percentage of patients do you think would actually improve if they are willing to make those changes?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to ask me how many are going to improve, I'd say essentially 100% will see something. Better lab values, better waistline blood pressure, blood sugar, blood cholesterol. Lifestyle change is absolutely the center of good medical management. How many are willing to do it? It's a spectrum, and I'm a pretty accommodating guy. You want to walk with me, we'll walk. You want to run and make changes today, like my friend Paul that we started up the plant-based group, we can make changes today. We can empty your closet, empty your refrigerator and your pantry and start over again. I use a lot of home-delivered healthy meal services to get people from A to Z in a day, for example. But, when you explain to them, you got to find why they're going to change. Granddaughter, a wedding, a career, a church, something that turns them on.
I'm Andrew Saul, Commissioner of Social Security. I'm here to warn you about telephone scammers pretending to be government employees. Some of these scammers may say threatening things like you will be arrested if you don't make payments or provide personal information. Do not fall for these tricks. These calls are not from us. Real Social Security employees will never threaten you for information or money. If you receive a call like this, hang up. Never give the caller your personal information, like your Social Security number or bank account, or send money in any form, cash, gift cards, wire transfers, or prepaid debit cards. Report the call to our law enforcement arm, the Office of the Inspector General, at oig.ssa.gov. Share this information with your friends and family.
Matthew.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. I just need you to listen to me.
I know that a lot of times, Mom, it might not seem like I'm listening to you, but I am. I hear you. And what you say really does matter to me.
I mean, let's be honest. No kid likes rules, but I get why we have them. I hear you, and I know it's because you care.
All the talks we've had over the years, including what you've told me about not using alcohol and other drugs,